So welcome to this new edition of the Complete Automotive podcast presented by Driving Fun and Family with myself, Mark Anthony Gonzalez Cruz, and my co-host here, Alan Koen van Koenenfeld. And what are we talking about today, Alan?
Today we're talking about a 2025 Mercedes-Benz GLC 350e 4MATIC. As you can see on the photo here, what is a 350e?
Yeah, and let's start by saying that it's a beautiful color. I don't know about you, but it's finally cool to see something that's not either gray or black or white. So to see that it may not be for everyone, this turquoise blue greenish, but
it's called Verdi Silver Metallic, and it is an option, which is 950 Canadian dollars.
Of course, and which talking about option, let's talk about the price. $81,787.50 as seen on the picture here. It's not cheap.
MSRP is $69,737.50. There are a couple of options on this vehicle.
Yeah.
One that I am really happy to see on this vehicle though is the DC fast charging, which is a $600 option.
But it's a must.
It is a must. I'm not even sure why it is an option, but it is good to see that they finally added such an option on the vehicle.
Yeah, because before we dig into the details, it is a very efficient DC fast charging. Maybe one of the best that we've seen, you and I, on even on electric cars, because we went from 25 to 100% in roughly 20 minutes. It's a small battery. It's just under 20 kilowatts, but we were able to see some quite fast charging speeds.
We saw up to 90%. It kept on going at 60 kilowatt, and then slowly it trickled down till 99%. It was still at 31 kilowatt charging. Again, this is a plug-in hybrid. It's not a fully electric vehicle. Which is astonishing because a lot of the vehicles, even when you hit 80%, you are slowed down like to 20-25 kilowatt.
Yeah, so it's actually, you're able to get back most of your charge pretty quickly on this battery. And if we're talking about the rest of the vehicle in general, for example, the interior, what did you think about the interior of the new GLC?
Mercedes knows how to do interiors. It's stunning. The leather that was there is beautiful. It's just a stunning vehicle. Here you see the steering wheel and the Napa. Is it Napa?
Yeah, it's called the macchiato beige article interior. So it is kind of beige white-ish interior. So it's like I like to call it like a grandpa style Mercedes-Benz, like the older ones.
Exactly, but it looks stylish and the seats are comfortable. The contrast of colors in this specific spec is just stunning. It makes a lot of sense. Here are the front seats, and here you have the back seats as well.
But let's go back on the front seats, because you were able to, and you actually found out by accident that you can put in the heated and ventilated seats at the same time.
Yes, so if you don't know if you want it heated or cooled, you have the option to have both on the GLC 350e. And one other interesting thing that we found out is the heated steering wheel. It can only be activated at the same time as the heated seats. You can deactivate that feature in the infotainment, but it's not possible to activate the steering wheel by itself.
Which is disappointing, because I don't know about our viewers, but like for myself, sometimes I have my hands cold and I don't necessarily need either both of the seat and the steering wheel to be heated. So that's kind of a strange decision by Mercedes. We're still talking about an $82,000 before tax vehicle in which you don't have a dedicated heated steering wheel, which is strange.
Which is strange, especially that other Benz have the physical button either on the side or they also have it on the steering wheel, which this vehicle doesn't, which seems to be kind of a loss for this type of vehicle.
So now getting back to the numbers here, they are quite impressive for a compact to mid-size crossover. We're talking about combined 313 horsepower, 406 pound-feet of torque, 0-100 or 0-60 for American viewers in about 6.7 seconds. What did you think of the performance overall, either just in electric or in sport mode, for example?
Just in electric, it feels very smooth, very comfortable. Where some of the disappointment it comes from is the suspension, which feels kind of weird, kind of too soft and too firm at the same time. And in sport mode, those numbers feel like good numbers, but in reality, I've not been able to achieve those specific numbers. The 6.7, maybe due to the rain, to the snow. It did have winter tires, so I actually got something in the 8-second realm instead of the 6.7. However, it could be explained by multiple factors, so it didn't feel as fast as the 6.7 announced.
Yeah, well, you know, and it's not an AMG, so its main focus isn't to be necessarily sporty, but I think you can still feel the boost of the electric motors when you're in sport mode, because they both work simultaneously with the gas engine. So that's
so it does feel quick off its feet, but not fast. Oh, that's one of the things. The steering wheel is a bit strange in my perception. It felt a bit loose in the center, but for some reason it handled very well, even though that the steering didn't feel connected.
I think one of my favorite things about the driving experience in the GLC is the automatic, like it uses the cameras to automatically slow down the vehicle without you actually even using the brake pedals, because it has kind of like an automatic regenerative braking, something like that. So I found it to be really interesting, because if you're driving on the freeway, for example, and it starts slowing down, the cameras will pick it up and will actually slow you down to like 20 kilometers an hour, about roughly 15 miles an hour.
Exactly. So you don't even have to think about adjusting the regenerative braking on this vehicle. You can just set it on auto, and it will adjust depending on your driving style. It will slow down faster if it feels that their vehicle is in front of you, or it will actually just let it roll out if there's no vehicle and if you don't press on the accelerator. So that type of feature is great. I wish more EVs had that, where you didn't have to think, okay, do I want to have more regenerative braking, or do I need to I have to think. Yeah. And there, the thinking is done by the vehicle for that.
Yeah, so it's a pretty neat use of technology there. So, in your opinion, would you recommend getting a GLC 350e?
It is a pricey vehicle. However, the big however here is that its range. It has an impressive range for a plug-in hybrid, maybe one of the best that we've tested in real life. I think it's 87 kilometers that is announced in real life. We actually saw 97 kilometers in real life in warm temperature, and maybe 84, 83 when there was sub-zero temperatures, again, -2, -3, which is fantastic for a plug-in hybrid. But the question is, at this price point, would you get maybe an EQE instead, or an EQC, which we don't have yet? That is the biggest question. But for somebody that is not ready to go full electric, this is the best of both worlds. It has an impressive range, and you still have a very large fuel tank to go long distance as well.
Yeah, exactly. And I think just because of the benefit of the DC fast charging, and like you mentioned, the presence of a gasoline engine, that means that you can live in the suburb and drive your car every day to work, and then on the weekend, if your cabin is like 1 hour, 2 hour, 3 hours away, you can actually just go on your own way, and you don't need two separate cars, or you don't have to stop for charging necessarily. So to me, a PHEV, and especially this one, is one of the best at being like a jack of all trades, you know, as being as much as a city dweller or as something that you can go to use to go on the highway if you want to visit some family members and stuff.
This also shows the fuel economy that we had during that week. We had 0.9 liters per 100 kilometers. That means most of our traveling with this vehicle, we were able to do just an electric. We had, at the end of our week, when we tested the vehicle, we were like, okay, we really have to deplete this battery and, you know, see how it actually drives in gasoline, because we would charge it overnight, drive all day during the next day, and we would still have battery left. And that for the whole week, that was the case. So on the weekend, we actually had to drive out of our way to deplete the battery to actually see how the vehicle drives in its gas form. And that's something that maybe for a plug-in hybrid, which I found strange as well, that when it switches from gasoline or from electric to gasoline, when the battery is depleted, it's not a smooth transition. It feels forced, so you have the electric engine that starts to power the vehicle, and then only the gasoline engine turns on. If you're on the highway and you're driving at a set speed, that's not the case, but if you're in the city and you're depleted, it might not be as fun to drive the vehicle.
Yeah, so that's always the case for PHEVs, like for people, you know, who are constantly driving a lot of kilometers, a lot of miles in the city. Once that battery gets depleted, sometimes there's that time frame, those couple of minutes, especially when the gas engine starts to warm up, that isn't the most the smoothest, refined.
Exactly.
And so now let's move on to our viewer question, because we actually got a question on our social media. So before asking you that question, I
actually don't know the question yet, so I'm pretty curious.
It's 100% authentic, okay? So if you have any questions about anything, any cars, or if you want to have our opinion on it, or a good question for the next podcast, feel free to drop that in the comment box, or even DM us on social media. Anyway, we've got a question here from my friend William, who's asking, I'm looking for a family minivan. Which one is the best in your opinion?
I think the best...
Well, let's start by naming all the minivans, because it's actually not a huge list. There are actually, let's say, 4.5. Okay, so let's start with the Honda Odyssey, the Toyota Sienna, the Chrysler Pacifica and Pacifica Hybrid, and Grand Caravan, and Chrysler Voyager, which are all those. They all look the same. They just have different names for some reason, and I'm missing one. So we got the Odyssey, the Sienna, the Chrysler, and...
Which one are we missing?
God, I had it, but like I said, it's totally authentic here. It's the not the Sedona, the Carnival, Kia Carnival.
Exactly, which is now available also in a hybrid.
Exactly.
Which we haven't tested.
Exactly.
But we're also forgetting another minivan.
The new ID Buzz.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So these are all the minivans.
Yeah.
So maybe short, if you want to go to electric, the ID Buzz is fun, maybe a bit too pricey in my point of view.
Yeah. And the range is not great, you know. Because when we're talking obviously about minivans, you're looking for practicality and, you know, ease of mind, and like you and I are both fan of electric vehicles, but you know as much as I do that charging on the road can be a challenge sometimes.
Otherwise, I think the Sienna is one of the most popular ones, especially the hybrid one, and it's the one that keeps its value the best. Otherwise, if you're doing a lot of towing, the Honda...
The Odyssey.
I think it's one of the better ones if you want to tow.
Yeah, it's got the V6 3.5 that you can find on the Pilot and on the Ridgeline that is super efficient, super reliable, so that's great. But I think also the Kia Carnival has maybe the best technologies inside and the most features of all five.
It actually looks like a luxury minivan inside if you go into the higher trims.
Yeah, exactly.
I remember when we tested it, the bed, it's almost like a bed in the second. The captain chairs are almost like a bed. They're super comfortable.
Yeah, they're super comfortable, especially if you've got like teenagers or adults. They can actually sit there for a while. And I remember that was one of, in terms of minivans, as much as I do, they're the best vehicles if you want to transport 6 or 7 adults.
Yeah, they're more practical, and there's no compromise of transporting multiple people in the vehicle. A lot of the larger SUVs or mid-sized SUVs, there is a compromise getting into the third row, which does not always exist in the minivan, which is a lot easier to go into the third row. You can actually put adults in the third row, not people like me, but we can put Marco in the back in the third row.
Yeah, that's right. Well, people of my size, I'm roughly 5'5", 5'6". Teenagers, like I said, can even fit in the third row, which isn't the case like in the CX-90 or Toyota Grand Highlander.
Which we tried.
Which I tried. I personally sat in a JV80, Genesis JV80. You can look at that video on Instagram as well. And it's not a great place to spend hours and hours on the highway. So what's your pick? The Sienna?
I think the Sienna would be one of my top picks, and I think the Carnival, if you want to look for comfort, the Sienna, if you want to keep it very long and maybe sell it after a certain while because it keeps its value the most, and I think the Carnival, just because it's a minivan that's jack of all trades, and it's really comfortable if you go into the higher trims naturally. And what do you think? What is your...
Well, I totally agree with you. The Sienna and the Sienna for its resale value and its longevity, and its people who buy minivans are looking to get the most out of their vehicles because it's obviously a pricey purchase. Sienna, Carnival. I think the Odyssey, even though it hasn't got maybe the best tech in the vehicle, it's so reliable. I mean, the V6 in that car and the transmission have proven to be so reliable over the years that I think that's one of the main reasons why people buy the Odyssey. It's because it's just so reliable. You never hear people complaining about it, and it's just that it's lacking the hybrid system that's in the Sienna. But yeah, I think I would go with the Sienna as well. It just has a decent amount of power. It's got a huge amount of space, and I think overall you can't go wrong. The PHEV Pacifica
we didn't talk a lot about.
Yeah, is interesting, but
it gets pricey very quickly.
Yeah,
I think the one we tested was close to $80,000.
Yeah, it was in the same water as the GLC, which to me is crazy. And
one thing, it has a good range. It is a plug-in hybrid. You can save a lot on gas with the vehicle. But one thing that Stellantis or Chrysler needs to fix on this vehicle is the range in the winter. When we tested it on 2 different occasions in cold weather, the hybrid system would never go on. It would always turn on the gas engine the moment that you turn on the heating. It's one of those plug-in hybrids that gives a bad rep to other plug-in hybrids.
Yeah, and there has been some hiccups too from the launch of that vehicle back in 2017, 2018. They've started figuring it out because the PHEVs and Stellantis are appearing everywhere. But that gave it a bad rep at the beginning.
And it's kind of strange because we know that Stellantis can do PHEVs, which work also in the winter. We have the 4xe that works during the winter. And it doesn't turn on the gas engine necessarily when you turn on the heating. So I think that's where we're at. I think that will close it up for today. And next week we'll talk about the Mitsubishi lineup. We recently tested 4 different Mitsubishis.
All 4?
Yes, all of the whole. We actually tested the whole lineup. So we'll be talking about that next week. So see you next week, and have a wonderful day.